Cosmology of Lord of the Craft. Chapter 1. Creation. In the beginning, there was nothing, a true state of nothingness, the void. Though the void existed as an abstract concept, it did not exist in reality, for without creation, there could be no comparison. It was everything and nothing, and though it is now considered by most to be a source of great powers and energy, it is more accurately described as the potential thereof. Neither was this primordial state bound by time. Though living beings may perceive the slow burn of decades and millennia, the time before time was simultaneously infinite in its duration and of no length at all. Suffice to say, what came before is simply incomprehensible to mortals, linked to the forward temporal flow. Reality, as we understand it, came to be when an entity known as the Creator birthed itself into being. Omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient was this progenitor. The Creator is, for all intents and purposes, the antithesis to the void. He is substance, consciousness, and law. Everything. In but an instant, this divine being earned its namesake. By his will, the universe was flooded with great and luminescent creation, and for the first time, the concepts of light and darkness were cast violently into the frenzy of the void. The sun thus serves as the heart, the center point of creation itself, as well as remains of the Creator's corpse. Too had the veil been rendered, the very barrier of creation which warded collapse by the immaterial. Intrinsically linked, the lingering power of the sun would thus fortify and preserve reality. The seventh mathic cycle had begun. Countless millions of stars scattered the heavens, the Angadamons and their planes comprising the brightest of them. However, with each cycle of the mathic, there arises a flaw with the Creator's design. Unbeknownst to all but a few, countless unclaimed and untamed planes of existence interwoven with reality, each brimming with the madness of infinite possibilities. The infinite shunting planes thus lined the heavens with brilliance, and consequently reduced the potency of the veil. As creation pushes outwards, the void pushes back. Both resist domination by the other, and as a result there exists a stalemate on the edge of the cosmos. It is a never-ending war, and with every incursion the sun finds itself yet more strained in maintaining the fabric of reality. Forever engaged in the dance of survival, the veil has since become the breeding ground for wretched beings known as voidal horrors. In essence, these are creatures spawned randomly from the endless bouts of creation and the lack thereof. It is the immaterial made conscious, a paradox. Tragically, these creatures store within them a great fear of death and the dissolution of their being. They seek to violate the veil, to enter the material at any cost, lest they be rejoined with the nothingness that is the void. Alas, these creatures spawn from nothing, embody nothing, and die as nothing. Thus, the damage they inflict is a total loss for those dwelling within the planes of creation. Chapter 2. The Formation. The Creator looked upon his lonesome bubble and uncovered newfound inspiration. It was deemed that others would inherit and inhabit his domain. From half of the Creator's soul did hundreds of extraordinarily potent greater shards manifest, the immortal and incorporeal Angadamons. From the other half, a presumably infinite quantity of lesser shards, the physical mortals. Given that these Creator shards are aspects of the Creator's personality and very being, their formation shattered his collective spirit and consciousness. Creation was now in the hands of his children, and his will would be done by them. Split into two factions, the Angadamons spread across the vast stretches of creation, and tied to them were their own planes whereby they could reign with omnipotence. Compelled to protect creation, Angles will often engage in battle with corruptive entities that would threaten the veil or the Creator's design. Daemons, on the other hand, opt to pursue their own machinations with little regard for norms, ethics, or cosmic stability. Regardless of intent, Angedaemons understand that through consumption of these shards, they shall attain the means to further develop their domain. The mortals, on the other hand, were ushered into the material planes of Eos and Eos. A two-sided coin, these planes of existence are reality made manifest. It is not hypothetical, nor is it ever growing by the will of an Angedaemon. To reside upon the material plane is to embrace a finite existence, to adhere to the rules and laws of the cosm. So governed is the material that one can even gaze upon the literal code of creation, the material alphabet. To traverse between the mirrored planes, mortals need to make use of portals or by means of wayfaring. Chapter 3. The First Mortals. It was upon Eos that Draugr, the daemon of knowledge, sought to imprint his legacy upon creation. With his power and infinite wisdom, Draugr warped the simple-minded dragon into that of the sentient Dragar, empowering them with means anathemic to the Creator's design. So powerful were the Dragar that, upon the mortal plane, they were prone to corruption, could rival an Angedaemon themselves, and, unbeknownst to them, even consume their Creator Shard. Enraged by such a perversion of the Creator's order, the Angles banded together and imprisoned Draugr for his hubris. In the millennia that followed, both Angul and Dragon would skirmish for the fate of draconic existence. The first plane to be inhabited with natural, greater soul-bearing mortals was that of Eos. These hogmen, the Bora, were the Creator's first attempt at manifesting a greater soul corporeally, and throughout the continent of Eos did these people flourish. Alas, the Bora have since vanished to the annals of time. To this day, very little is known of the Bora, with the only traces of their existence betrayed by remnant boar skulls which litter the depths. Centuries following the Great Vanishing, Eos would again find itself populated with many a beast race, for the daemon Metzli experimented with her own Draugr-like schemes. On the other side of the coin, the civilizations of the mortals we know today flourished upon the plane of Eos for some centuries. A tranquil land it was, and the ancestors of the descendants spread across the supercontinent of Aegis and settled into 4 distinct civilizations. Effectively perfect, these mortals were long-lived, beautiful, and hardy. They were the Creator's preferred design. It would take centuries before catastrophe befell them, yet, until that day, Aegis and that of Eos remained a promised land, a paradise of endless succor. Chapter 4. The Abrades and the Soulstream. As is the nature of mortality, the looming inevitability of death stalks all mortals. Though their life upon the material may have been one of warmth and substance, what comes after is dreary indeed. For within the veil there exists a nigh invisible flow of souls, the Abrades. It is the desolate path of the incorporeal soul, and it is what many would consider to be the end of one's natural existence. Thus, should the soul detach itself completely from the thin auroras of the Elysian wastes, a soul shall find itself hopelessly adrift in the Abrades. In the beginning, the Abrades was a primeval realm absent of an Angul, a realm manifested by the progenitor himself. Deceased souls would find themselves drawn to this gloomy reality of infinity, forever destined to roam without aim and in pursuit of liberation. Mortals rightly fear this fate, for an unending tether to a realm absent of life's virtue is terrifying. Upon the material plane, the collective consciousness of mortal kind have since perceived this incomprehensible stream of souls as the moon. Ariel, an archangel of great compassion, pitied the forlorn souls which were ensnared upon this plane. As was her calling, she sought to claim dominion over the stream of souls and act as its caretaker. She made it so and, in effect, made the Abrades her own. To solidify her claim, she fused with it her own realm, the Golden City, so that none would seek to warp it for their own ambitions. Ariel understood the nature of her kin and the potency of the greater soul. Were these mortals to be united with their immortal Angedaemon cousins, the power of the Creator Shards would combine and fortify. Too would the realm of the prospective Angedaemon provide a fate far more merciful than the torment of the Abrades. Thus, Ariel configured the Abrades to act as a web which interlinked the planes of her siblings, and about its relative center, the stream of souls would fork. It was Ariel's will that the souls aligned with the Angedaemons would now find refuge to their respective domain. Too were her kin permitted to cast the luminance of their realms onto the Abrades itself, whereby forlorn souls might be guided by beautiful and inviting lights into the new purpose amongst the gods. In the rarest of circumstances, souls which had been stripped bare might even find themselves leaking back into the material plane, reincarnating as a new being. Mortals would again thrive in perpetuity. Ariel remained devout to the design of creation and, ironically, scorned those who would warp its design. Mortals who had altered their souls, be they beings of malice or charity, found themselves revoked of their once fated afterlife. It is thus by Ariel's will that those of darkness, evil, anything she deemed anathema, would be forever condemned to roam the wastes of the Abrades. It is why even today that the most wretched of beings still linger upon the moon, forever plotting their escape. Chapter 5. Other Realms. The Cosm, in its current state, retains a mostly stable order by the design of Ariel. Dozens of Angedaemonic planes remain linked to the Abrades, each retaining the ability to occasionally pluck its souls adrift in that sullen limbo. However, to the dismay of Ariel, the planes of Apahet and Eliss have managed to incur directly upon the Soulstream, entitling either to a facilitated means of claiming souls. As a result, the descendants of Krug now find themselves ushered into the spirit planes, the Stargast Stro, akin to the man of the skies. More dreadfully, the most unfortunate of beings might find themselves damned to the war-torn hells of Maz Stramosa, a patchwork of infernal, conquered planes that had been bound together by the black sorcery of Eliss and his patron Ixris. The material plane of Eos itself has become deeply scarred per Aegis' inward collapse and the resultant formation of the anomalous and malignant Abyss. Finally, the shunting planes, isolated in their infinity, are left accessible only by the means of reality-warping magics. Chapter 6. Eliss, the Nether, and the Seven Skies. Eliss, the Archdemon of Ruin, sought domain over creation. As was his ambition, Eliss sought to become the greatest of his kin. He had witnessed how Ariel claimed the Soulstream and, deeming such a power a key to his ambitions, sought to control the shards of mortality at its source. Millennia ago, Eliss' plan was put into motion. Manifesting upon the mortal plane, the Angedaemon had sought to twist the mortals of Eos into horrid beings. He had hoped that through the corruption of the legendary Four Brothers, that their peoples would fall into his hands. Eliss had promised each of those key mortals a boon which strummed the strings of their heart, and all but Krug agreed. Enraged by this mortal's defiance, Eliss allowed his greater nature to take hold. He was his ruin, everything he would touch would become corrupt. The subsequent war lasted 3 decades. The dead rose at Eliss' whim, and their souls were forever tarnished. The concept of undeath was born. Eliss found himself upon the precipice of victory when the pleadings of the mortals finally reached the ears of their immortal cousins. En masse, Angedaemons manifested and rejected Eliss' scheme to control the material. Together, both mortal and Angel counterattacked, the four most dedicated of the immortals even sacrificing their own plane and heavenly being to descend fully as one of the 4 legendary golden weapons. Alas, Eliss had grown too great per his conquest and could not be slain. Instead, Eliss would be banished to the very depths of the material plane, forever imprisoned. As he stewed in his prison for time unknown, Eliss did not lament. Rather, Eliss continued to scheme. What was once an endless expanse of caverns and darkness, a plain between planes, now became a light with wretched flame and teeming with horrid monstrosities. The corruption wrought by Eliss had twisted his damnation into a wicked palace of his own making, the Nether. Though Eliss had since escaped, this plane remains brimmed with undeath and demonic influence. In a final act of defiance, Eliss bestowed upon the mortals curses most petty. From these maledictions, the distinct natures of the descendants finally came to be, and it were the Hornites who found themselves afflicted with the most cruel of curses. Mankind would be forever burdened with short lives and crumbling vessels. In the span of an elf's life, 15 or more generations of men would perish. Ariel, who felt deep sorrow for the now tarnished descendants, offered a remedy to each of their afflictions. For man, the only blessing that could be levied came in the form of an afterlife of their own, unbeholden to any deity or the horror of the Abrades. Ariel thus opened a new path from the relative center, one destined for the heart of creation, the sun. Upon its very edge there existed a primordial realm within arm's reach of the stream of souls, the seven skies. There, the Hornites would rejoin the ambient energies of creation, where they bask in holy light and the bliss of limitless imagination before fading all together into a single collective. The souls of humanity would thus aid in the fortification of the Veil, their collective shards replenishing the sun's exhaustive stores. Chapter 7. Conclusion. Cosmology is intrinsically linked to each and every minute shard of the Creator, mortal and immortal, those who seize their own fate. Many work in image of the gods, in direct or indirect service to enforce that Angedamon's will upon the material. Others work in rejection of the gods, shaping their own destiny with what fraction of everything that makes up their free soul. Some in service to Dragonkin, living in fate of those who too were created by Angedamons, yet live in their shadow. That path is yours to decide. What fate will you choose?